In this episode of Kids Podcast, I am honored to share wisdom with you about leading kids in your church and in your home. Dealing with kids is hard work, and I'm praying that we add some tools to your tool belt today. So let's dive into today's topic. In this episode of Kids Podcast, we're talking about age-appropriate teachings. When I'm talking to this class of toddlers, how do I get them to focus? When I'm talking to this class of preteens, how do I get them to focus? When I'm talking to teenagers, how do I get them to focus? And that's what we're talking about today in Kids Podcast. I'm Ron Gale, your podcast host, and on this podcast, we talk a lot to the leaders of kids, young people, because, hey, we are leading them into an overflowing life with Jesus, and one day these small humans will grow up to become big humans. And so today we're going to highlight and talk through what it's like to talk to age-specific children and youth in their way rather than my way or the adult way. Because the reality is, talking to a nursery kid who can't even talk at all is not the same as talking to an elementary kid, which is not the same as talking to a teenager. So I'm going to give you my little tips and tricks on what helps me to communicate and what helps me to teach my leaders on how to minister to their age-appropriate classrooms. So let's do that today as we dive in. Let's start from the beginning. Toddlers. No, let's go even farther. Yes, much farther. Nursery. We're going to go into nursery because I've had nursery leaders and they would want a curriculum and they would want to teach their babies things. And I was like, really? What? Why? And to be honest, I let them go through that experience to experience what I had experienced when I was younger and learning about curriculum for age-appropriate classrooms. And that's a whole leadership thing, kind of allowing my leaders to fail so that they can learn through their failures. But in the nursery class, I ultimately did not see a need for a curriculum. In nursery, when the children are ages 0 to about age 2, I just believed in the philosophy of love. Just to love those kids. In my mind, those children are being dropped off by mom and dad. Mom and dad want to go to the big church and they want to experience the big church. And the whole goal for our department with the nursery is to love on the kids so that we can love on the parents, so that the parents would love church. Love, love, love. That's it. No teaching, no videos, no books. Just hold them, play with them, keep them alive, change their diapers. Love, love, love. Love the kids so that we can love the parents, so the parents can love the church. So then we jump up to the next age group, which is ages 2 to about 4, the toddler class. In this classroom, we go to the next philosophy. And all these philosophies begin with an L. So the first one was love. This one is to liven, L-I-V-E-N. In our toddler room, our role is to liven the environment through play, through comfort, and interaction. We did have a curriculum. We do have a curriculum, if that's the word you want to call it, a curriculum. And it cycled every year. And this curriculum is probably about 1 minute long. It's not that exciting, not that big. And each curriculum came with a very, very simple craft. Very simple. It could be coloring. It could be molding. It could be super clean glue. Like, if it was messy, we just didn't do it. And that was more so that we could care for mom and dad. We didn't want their kids going home with paint all over them or goop all over them. So stick glue and basic crayons and basic coloring projects. That's what we would do. But how we broke it down in that room was, instead of just loving on them, we would just liven up their involvement, their play, their comforts, their interactions. Well, there's a lot of playtime in this particular environment. We had a lot of toys. Yes, we cycled the toys. Yes, we rotated the toys. That's not necessary. That was just a preference on for our team, for that particular leader. Um, but after play, there'd be a small time of listening to the Bible, and we kind of treated the Bible time like it was book reading time, just like if you were to go to the library and it was listening to the author read a book. They sat down in a chair and they read this little thing, showed some pictures, and if it was longer than 5 minutes, it was probably too long. After that, we may have done a craft um, directly related to what we had just read. There'd probably be a snack in there, some more playtime with a rotation of bathroom potty breaks and diaper breaks and things like that. So the toddler room is just livening up what's going on, to liven. All right. The next age group would have been the pre-kindergarten. Pre-kindergarten. In this particular age group, we removed a few things and added a few things, and all just depended on what was going on. The philosophy in this room was more of a lecture format. And when I say lecture, I don't mean like college lecture. It was more like we were starting to teach them how to sit and how to listen. Because as they grow up to become big humans, there's a lot of sitting and listening in the big church. So we were kind of showing them what to expect as they get older and older. We were also introducing things that they were going to experience as they got older and older, like a worship service at this age. So there would be games in here, but a lot of the games in here were more of an interactive game, like puzzles and connect the dots and trivia and just things that engage their mind. We also had like blocks and games and toys that allowed them to be creative and those kinds of things. And eventually they would go into their service. The service was structured so they would sit and listen. Now, the sitting and listening was trained to transition within 7 minutes. I did not want the teacher to lecture for too long because, hey, they are just kids. And if they did that for too long, well, you know what happens. So there would be like 7 minutes or less of a video that kind of brought in some sort of character. 7 minutes or less of the Bible and what the Bible meant. 7 minutes or less of some music, like some songs with motions that got the kids standing in their spots. 7 minutes of maybe a game that related to the message. All very, very similar things you would see in a regular kids service, except it was just downsized and contextualized for this age group. But the key element is a lot of it was set up so that the kids were learning how to sit in their particular spot and engage from their particular spot. Yeah, and then there would be a time where they would transition over to tables and do some coloring, some crafts, all associated with the message or topic of the day. There'd be a potty break. And then every now and then we would have like a snack. We didn't always do snack in this class, but especially if there was a holiday or a special, we would encourage that. But I left that up to the particular coordinator of that classroom to decide if they wanted a snack daily or not. But let's recap on the philosophies so far. Because in the nursery, we had the philosophy just love them, love them, love them. In the toddler room, we had the philosophy to liven things up so that the kids could interact. And then in the pre-K room, we had the philosophy to lecture and to kind of get this idea in their mind that there is an order to service, and a large part of that order is you helping us not run around like crazy. So then we go up to our next age group, which is the kindergarten class. Um, and we're not going to really call them kindergarten. We're going to call it the whole elementary. Now, if this particular classroom grew more than it did, I probably would break it down to just like a kindergarten, maybe kindergarten or first grade. But our elementary class was kindergarten through third grade. Um, yeah. The philosophy in this classroom was to lead on. So they were already familiar with lecture because they just learned that in the last grouping. So now when they aged up, they're now learning to be led on or lead on. And in here, they get a full service, exactly like you would see in the big church. They have chairs. We call them easy risers. They have an opening. They have a character. They have a monologue. They have a whole worship service with a whole emotions. They have announcements. They have a sermon. They have altar call. Like the kids actually come to the altar. They kneel and they pray and they talk to Jesus. They might even do a small group variation or a large group variation. But in here, we lead them on, we lead them through an actual service that's geared towards them. And a lot of it was very entertaining because you can't just lecture them anymore. And we're not, when I say lecture, I'm not saying boring lecture. The idea of the lecture was that we were teaching them how to stay in one spot. Here in the elementary room, there still might be a little bit of that staying in one spot, but it's more of we're like leading you through an experience, leading you through a service, leading you through an encounter with Jesus. And that was the philosophy, that was the mindset. We were entertaining them by leading them. We didn't really want them running around doing whatever they want. That was old school toddler stuff. Now you're in kindergarten, third grade. We need you to be ordered, organized, but also entertained and led to Jesus because, hey, we want you to have an overflowing life with God. Um, Also, in this particular phase, a part of the leading on was leading them into being involved with the service. Like the kids would be the ones operating the lights. The kids would be the ones operating the pro presenter. The kids would be the ones on the stage doing the motions for the service. The kids would be the ones helping. During pre-service and post-service, we would have an area that was free time, free play, where the kids could play. Play was super important. I have a whole episode on play and what it means for kids. And to recap in one simple word, play is equivalent to third room relationships for adults. It is where we have conversations and just talk, and it builds that part of the brain and it stimulates our part of the brain. Well, play does the same thing for kids. It allows them to just have relationships without the conversation. um, so that was the elementary room. Lots going on, lots of introductories, lots of leading them through what it means to be involved with an actual service. So then we go on to the next age group, which is our preteen group. Preteens. This is fourth, fifth, and sixth graders. And here things change drastically, and it changes not because of any other reason other than they are going through life change. Their brains are going through life change, and so we have to adjust for their age appropriate environment. It was more of a small group format. On occasion, we would do proscennial formats, and there's no right or wrong or reason to that particular rhyme other than the kids needed their space to have a little bit of their creativity involved. And so the lesson plan was identical to that of the elementary room, with the one main philosophy difference is L, as in laboratory. So in the other rooms, we said lecture, we said lead on. This room is laboratory. And if you remember back to when you were in fourth, fifth, or sixth grade and you had sixth grade science, you would get these laboratories where you sat with a group of people and you were involved, you were hands on to your learning experience. And this is the exact philosophy that we adopted for this age group. We wanted these fourth, fifth, and sixth graders to have their hands on in the educational process. So, in the lecture portion of our Bible topic of basic instructions before leaving Earth and teaching them to how to read a manual before, and understanding that the manual was good for life and instructions, and that our Bible is a manual. Now we come to this class and we actually give them a shelving unit and we tell them to put it together. With the one exception that we hide the manual. They are the ones building this particular IKEA shelving unit without a manual, and they're talking through it, and they're coming to the realization that, hey, we don't have a manual. So then we bring in the idea like, hey, this Bible is basic instructions before leaving Earth. It's our manual for life. And so we engage then, instead of a sermon, it's more of a small group topic, question and answer. Bottom line, everything we did in this class was laboratory based. We provided worship. It just wasn't the same every time. One week it might be, let's walk over to the big service and see how they do it. Another week was, let's write the motions to a new song. Another week it might be, let's take the motions we just wrote to a new song over to elementary and do it with them. Another service might be something creative that they came up with. We did the same thing with the Bible. Instead of just telling them the Bible story, we let them make a video based on it. We let them do an interview based on it. We let them use toys to reenact it. Whatever they want to do to be creative and interactive in an laboratory environment, that's what we did. So for preteens, it was less lecture, more lab. And that's the big deal. So let's recap before we go down to the last age group. For nursery, it's love, love, love. For toddler, it's to liven. For pre-kindergarten, it's to lecture. For all of elementary, which is kindergarten through third grade, it's to lead on. And for preteen, it's laboratory. These are the philosophies by which we approached the teaching method. Now we are in our final group, teens. 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade. And if you wanted to, you could break it down into junior high and senior high. But I don't think it really matters because the same L applies to both. And that is lit. This has got to be lit, because if it's not lit, it's going to be boring, and I'm not coming back next week, and I'm not asking to come back. It needs to be lit, son, because lit. Needs to be on fire. It's not about entertainment. It's not about the lecture. It's not about any of that stuff. It's not about how cool I think I am or what my message is going to say. It's not about how important I think this gospel's presentation is going to be. It doesn't matter what the topic is. If it's not lit, they are out. Are you following? This is teenagers here. If there's no Riz, they're going to go. I don't know how else to explain it other than if you're not cool enough, they aren't sticking around enough. And we can sit here and have all kinds of debates on, well, the Holy Spirit and, the gospel and, God does this. And okay, I've still seen it over and over and over after 20 some years of doing ministry. Teenagers are going to need money, they're going to need girlfriends, and they're going to need boyfriends, and they're going to need all these other cool things that the popular kids are going through. And if you're not going to help them answer those kinds of questions in a cool way, they're out. I've seen kids who love Jesus called into ministry, and it just wasn't good enough. And they said, you know what? Never mind. I'm out. You have to keep up with it. It's a hard life to be a youth pastor. Now, does that mean that God cannot do the impossible? Of course not. He's the man. He can do whatever he wants. But my role isn't to sit here and debate with you. My role is to sit here and say, hey, this is the wisdom I learned. But whatever I teach, it's got to have a little bit of lit to it, and that will make it that much better when I'm teaching. Now, there's a lot to go into youth ministry with, like the application of relationships, the application of this, the application of that. Ultimately, when it comes to the teaching philosophy, it needs to be lit on fire. And the best way I've thought about all these philosophies is that when I was a youth pastor and I was teaching, I was always concerned with whether or not I was embarrassing. Like, are these characters embarrassing? Is the way I say that embarrassing? Should I not use that word because it's not cool for an adult to say Riz? I had all these questions that made doubt in my mind. And that was good because I wanted to be aware. But the kids also appreciated authenticity and the relationship. So there is grace there. But if I ultimately didn't deliver the lit, it got boring real fast, and friends don't invite other friends to boring. Friends will get their friends to show up to something that's lit, which is why even at a football game where your team loses, friends bring friends to watch a football game because it's entertaining, it's lit, something exciting is happening, something to talk about. Yep. Now, we're not talking about youth services. We're just talking about the philosophy of the teaching mindset. So review, nursery's got to be about love, love, love. Toddlers got to be about liven, L-I-V-E-N, liven it up. Pre-K has got to be about lectures, teaching them how to sit in one spot and understanding that this is the culture that's about to come, and then entertaining them from there. Elementary is about leading them on, also considering to leading them up, to leading them through a full service. Preteen is about laboratory rather than lecture and getting them involved and engaging. And lastly is the teenagers. It's about being lit or not being embarrassing to my friends that are coming. Ew, gross. Now, the big difference between the teenage environment and the kids environment, I said that I was always concerned with if I was embarrassing for the teenagers. But when I was speaking to elementary or even the preteens, I just didn't care about that. And I just went all in because the kids didn't care. I embraced my characters. I embraced what was cool and Riz and I 5'6" everything because that's the kids were all about it. They had not yet developed this mindset of, oh, that's so there's a little bit of that going on. But again, this particular episode is not about how to do a service. It's just a mindset of how I deliver this topic to the kids. If you've got questions about this, hit me up. I've got some answers, not them all, but I do have friends in high places that can help me get the answers to your questions. Until next time, everybody say, bye, Pastor Juan. Thank you for listening. Smash those like buttons, turn the bells blue, or whatever the kids are doing these days. At the end of the day, our goal is to raise little people to one day become big people. You can find older archived podcasts on our YouTube channel and support what we do at rongaleministries.com. Enjoy!